Hello and welcome to another episode of Brand Retro. Today we have Mickie Kennedy from eReleases. Mickie is a PR expert, a press release ninja, media relations networker, and the founder and president of eReleases. eReleases is a small business leader for press release distribution. They've been in business about 22 years, and Mickey's an expert at helping small businesses increase their visibility and credibility. And today he's joining the Brand Retro podcast to talk about eReleases and share some valuable insights. Hey, Mickie, welcome to the podcast. How's it going today?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So tell me a little bit about eReleases and your thought process behind it. I will add that I think people forget about the whole press release process. I think it sometimes gets put in that air quotes old school bucket, and people forget that's a viable option for them to get the word out and to grow their business. So tell me a little bit about your mindset on that and how eReleases breaks that myth.
Sure. I started eReleases a little over 23 years ago, and I was looking for a way to help small businesses get access to the media. And I had been faxing press releases before that for the company I worked at, and I was seeing a movement towards email. And I reached out to journalists and asked if I could keep them in my database and send them relevant press releases. And I launched in October of 1998 with about 10,000 journalists in my database, and it's grown over the years. And we now reach PR Newswire, a national distribution over them, included in our pricing. And that's a real value to small businesses and startups and entrepreneurs, because the Newswire itself charges $1,000 to move a 500-word press release, and you get the national distribution with eReleases when you work with us.
Yeah. So when it comes to client like expectations, what should a client expect when they put out press releases? Because I know that in the press release world, I know you throw it out there, you hope it sticks, you hope somebody picks it up. What's considered normal? What should they expect?
I would say that the majority of our customers get nothing other than the syndication reports where the press release goes out. That being said, I have certain customers who get 100% pickup rate every single time because they know what they're doing and they're doing strategic press releases. And so if you're just approaching it as writing a press release based off of something that you've seen, a lot of people will take a press release about a particular thing like a product launch and then look at that release and write their own version of it. And those don't generally do very well. What you really have to do is approach it from the ground up as, what do I have that's compelling to say that a journalist, being a curator, would want to share with his audience? And if you can work backwards and build something knowing those expectations, you can really hit their hot buttons and make sure that you do get media pickup.
Yeah. So do you help the customer understand and kind of form that criteria around what's press-worthy and what isn't? Because in our own businesses, we all think it's big news. So how do they know, or how do they balance that priority of what actually is worth it?
What I did was I came up with a masterclass that I've been pitching to my customers, saying, before you do your next release, follow this. It's less than an hour. It's 8 winning strategies that will result in media pickup. The easiest one, I've never seen it fail, is to do a survey or study within your industry. Have a compelling press release about the results of the survey or study and just share it to the media. Right now is a really great time to do that because we've had a lot of changes going on and people still don't understand where we stand with the economy within your industry. Are you increasing spending, decreasing, not hiring? What's the hot buttons right now? So if you were to take the temperature of your industry by reaching out to them and getting them to complete a survey, you would do very well. One thing that I say is, since you're doing a survey, throw a couple of oddball left field questions. Sometimes the strange ones that are, coming from a completely different angle can really, push the survey results a certain way where the people are really captivated by that. In addition to that, people are they get really flustered with how to do a survey or study. There's SurveyMonkey, there's Google Forms. So all you need to have is a link that you would share with people there. Then they get tripped up with, who do I send it to? My list isn't big enough. How do I get respondents? You can partner with a small independent trade association, not the large ones, but the smaller ones get no love. And so if you approach them and said, hey, would you be willing to share this with your members? I'll give you credit in a press release I'll be issuing over the Newswire. Most of them are going to say yes, and they'll share it through social media and email with their members. And in some cases, you may even consider co-branding if they push back and want a little bit more credit But these are all ways in which to make it very easy for you. You're not reinventing something from the beginning. You're just really coming up with like 16 interesting questions to ask right now in your industry. And it's all integrated in one link that you would then share with people and then analyze the results.
Yeah, and based off of some of your answers here, I definitely feel like there's probably a strategy in sending out that PR, that press release, in how to get noticed, how to hit the right ones who you think might engage versus the ones that maybe don't. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think, at least in my experience, and this is probably going back a few years to when press releases were probably handled a little differently, it just seemed like you just sent it out there and hoped for the best to some degree. It's not really like that, is it?
It's still like that for some people. And we used to allow people to choose unlimited industry categories, and you pay extra after a certain point. But we've actually started restricting it because people are their own worst enemies. You're not writing a press release that's really relevant to 40 industries. You want to tailor your messaging for a specific core audience. It might include 2 or 3 industries or related industries, like maybe high tech, cyber security, high tech hosting, or something like that as well. But you're not going to also want to include banking and accounting. And so many of my customers want to do the shotgun approach. And you might get 4 or 5 pickups, but they probably aren't going to be your customer base, your audience base. If where your industry is and where your customers are, you want to get into those magazines, publications, newspapers that they read. And so therefore you most of the time want to be very focused. So rather than shotgun, you want the rifle approach, be very strategic, very focused, and really speak to that audience.
Yeah, and the byproduct, and I want to hear your thoughts on this, but the byproduct of going through the motions and sending out that press release, it's everything from gaining credibility out in the marketplace to brand awareness to just keeping your progression as a company and how your growth is and all those different things on the forefront of people's minds. And I know that probably barely scratches the surface, but can you tell me a little bit about the ripple effect of benefits that come from doing stuff like that?
So I have so many anecdotes about how press releases and getting media pickup have helped companies. And the one that everyone wants is a huge upswing in sales. And that does happen, but sometimes it doesn't. I've had people who came back and said, hey, we got a couple of really good industry media pickups. And I had a supplier that I've been trying to get to return my phone calls reach out to me because they saw me. I had someone say that we were just declined for expanding our credit line. And the banker called me and said, I just saw your release on the wire and I'm going to resend it back up in the hopes that we can increase your credit line. There are people who are on the fence, who are your leads. And if you share your media pickup and your press releases with them, it's a huge credibility boost to them when they see that you do get media pickup. And maybe they're like, I'm not sure if this is the right company for me, but all of a sudden the New York Times or somebody wrote about you and you've shared that article with them. They're just like, yeah, these people passed the test. I feel like they would be a really good fit. All different types of media pickup. I've also heard of people say that felt that their staff got energized because they got really focused about their messaging. One of the things I tell people is to own your story and hone your USP, your unique selling proposition, because you're doing something, or you should be doing something that's unique to you in the marketplace. And if you're not, you want to define and create one. And I've had some customers who just came and said that I had staff who just said that they've been sitting by idly, not 1 foot in, 1 foot out of the company, and that the press releases and the messaging really got them on focus and really taught them what they were really wanting to do. And it gave them a new drive going forward.
Yeah, that's cool. So what does that look like? What does an ideal customer look like, and what's that journey look like? So if I'm coming to eReleases and I say, hey, I don't know where this is going, but I want to explore this as an option, how do you drag me through the mud and make sure that what we're doing is right fit for me? Because I honestly feel like this is something that's not on most people's radar. And
I would say that masterclass that I created is a good place for anybody to start. It's less than an hour. It's completely free. Everybody said I need to put a paywall around it. I want my customers to learn it. If you were, as an entrepreneur or a business owner, were to take it I guarantee you're going to walk away with 6 to 8 really good ideas that you should consider for doing a press release about your company or yourself. And it's at eReleases.com/plan, PLAN. Again, it's completely free. I'm just opening out there and showing people the possibilities of which you can do and send a press release and get media attention. So many people come to us with a press release that's already written, and the majority of those, nothing happens. A personnel change in your business isn't very meaningful, and it's not extremely newsworthy. But if you were to take a strategic approach and write about something completely different, you stand a much higher chance of getting media success.
Yeah, and just so everybody who's listening knows, I will share that link in the show notes too, so it's easily accessible. But no, that's great insight, Mickie, because again, I think we don't know, we don't know. And if that masterclass gives them an opportunity to hear it from you and brainstorm within the process before they come to you or form that idea, I think because I think the assumption is this is old school marketing. This is I just don't believe a lot of people are even looking at this as an option. And for a lot of smaller businesses and companies without huge budgets, this is a way to do some grassroots marketing and some guerrilla marketing by getting that news out there. Would you agree?
I totally agree. I have a case study on my website of a company early in the pandemic. It was an organization called Dining Bond Initiative. They built themselves after the War Bond Initiative, and it was meant where you could tap your favorite restaurant in your local market that was probably closed. And if they accepted, you would fund them and you would get secured with a dining bond, which is like a gift certificate. They would get the money immediately. And so it was a way to help these restaurants that were closed early on. And it generated millions of dollars in revenue, got over 150 articles, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, New York Times, all the big companies, organizations, as well as the smaller news agencies like CNN and Bloomberg and those, they all picked it up. And it generated so much goodwill, and it was just one press release. I donated, but it normally would have cost $300 to move that press release and generated over $10 million in revenue. And that is a extreme example. I think what helped it work very well is the leverage ability where you have a message and it can be available to go viral and spread, and the newswire facilitates that. But what really worked for them was it was a period where there was so much negative news and uncertainty in the marketplace that the media was desperate for something positive. And here was somebody who created something without profit as a goal to just really help. And that did extremely well. And the thing about it is a lot of charitable press releases generally don't do very well, but this was just a perfect storm where it worked out really well for them.
Yeah. How often do you see that feel-good story rise to the top versus the traditional press release?
I see it happen quite a bit, but it generally it usually has to have something that's a little more unique to it. We work with about a third of the people who appear on Shark Tank. The producers of the show recommend us and tell them before your episode airs, you should do a press release on eReleases. And so we see some of their charitable efforts do really well. And I think it's the upside of being on a national show like the Shark Tank. But there's also, I think that they tend to winnow out the types of organizations that are doing something different.
Right.
And so I think that people like the discovery aspect of things like that. So I'd say that traditional charity and traditional giving and stuff like that they have a harder time of getting media success. But those who are doing something a little bit different, like maybe it's a charity that's established, but they're doing something that's a little more aligned with social media, or they have an Instagram component or something like that. There are ways to play it so that you are doing something unique and bringing something new to the story. And those tend to do very well.
So in your 22 years, how much has the game changed? I got to imagine with social media and just the way things are right now from just a social climate standpoint, it has to have changed just tremendously.
It has. When I first started, blogging was something that was becoming new, and I was seeing these industry blogs that had more influence than like industry publications. And we had to fight the newswire for them to get access to the press releases and the news feeds and stuff like that. And it's completely 180 now. The newswire is like really open to sharing the press releases and news feeds with anybody who's an influencer. So it's not unusual for an Instagram influencer to be more relevant than a fashion trade publication within the fashion industry. And the newswire has been accepting. So I think that they are moving and recognizing that the media is changing and what that media looks like. It's still press releases, but there's a lot more focus on images, and it's moving towards video. And I think that video is the natural evolution of where a lot of this stuff is going.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think where things have evolved and your ability to stay in that game and just evolve your craft with it is pretty cool, because I think traditional marketing and some of those methods get left by the roadside, so to speak, as things take off. And those things that get left by the roadside are still effective. They just, people don't think of them because they're not top of mind anymore.
Yeah, I hate the person who comes and kicks the tires and does one press release that they've already written, and it's not really a strategic press release, and it doesn't do very well, and they just move on to something else. Because if you really want to test PR, you have to do a campaign. It's usually 4 to 8 press releases, and you want to do a lot of different strategic ideas, approach different angles and see what works and build on what does.
And I'm a big believer in letting the experts lead you there. So if you come to somebody like Mickie and eReleases, let them coach you, let them take you where it needs to go, because it's a deal breaker when it comes to the results. Mickie, thanks for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Thank you. If you'd like to learn more about CyberDogs, share your thoughts, or even ask a specific question about this episode and or the brand retro mindset, contact me directly at mike@cyberdogsmarketing.com.